It's real life, just trying to be a bit smart. Just trying to be a bit smarter than we normally are. It only looks clean and tidy when Nick helps me. I don't do it myself. But when he helps, so last night he went, right, I'm going to clean the kitchen. That's our laundry pile. My laundry basket is just kind of in front of the washing machine. So that had to go, you know, it's like...
Little things.
But do you know what I actually have liked is that you kind of get the feeling that for a lot of people, that it's quite natural, their houses are quite natural. You don't feel like people are... It just seems natural, it's just homely and nice, yeah. Not kind of for Instagram. So can you see which one he's gone very grey, but he's got a good beard.
That's blue.
Were any of these guys in England?
Oh,
He just looks like one of those Australian guys, but he's not quite him.
Pink.
this guy was, I think that's Brother Thomas. He was in England. I don't
Paint need
do you
to
know
make,
that's terrible, I
make
can't
it
remember
wet
any of
and
their
then
names.
it's called
Where
paint.
are they? New York?
First is
Yeah,
The
Most
Bright
Blessed Sacrament Friary is in Newark. What was he going to say?
The
Let
thing
me
that we
say
practiced 3,000 billion times. And then I just go and do the other thing again. Hello, I'm Maria. Welcome to One of Nine. And today, thank you, Fiona, for sharing a little window into your life today. Fiona's married to Nick, and they have Benedict. And I'm just saying and blowing hot. Some of you might even recognise Fiona from Youth 2000 and being out there and doing her mission thing. Lots of the women we've had on the show as well already have met husbands and been inspired by other people in the faith through Youth 2000. And Fiona was manning the ship of Youth 2000 for a few years.
My mum is Catholic. My dad is baptised, but not never grew up going to church or anything like that. My dad would support us, you know, as in come along, and he would never kind of speak against it. And my dad, I guess he's one of those people. He's very Christian-hearted. He just doesn't the thing, whatever the thing is, didn't happen yet in his life. So we pray for him. So we went to Catholic schools, and I suppose like anything, at the time I thought, oh, this is, you know, we had to travel for school. Most of our friends were staying local, so I felt a bit like, but looking back now, we did get, you know, some of our faith, I would say, from school. Some of it was backed up in the school, but mostly probably from home. Yeah, I remember praying as a child. There was definitely a time in my life, probably teenage years, where I felt like I was one foot in and one foot out. I think I remember a time as, again, teenage years at school, of realising I was the only one out of all of my friends that still went to Sunday Mass. So they weren't, and I thought, why do I, you know? I'd say I've probably only missed Sunday Mass, I don't know, like 5 times in my life. I didn't have a period where I left the church.
Yeah.
Never.
So how do you think, what was it that kept you close to your faith? What was it that kept you going to Mass? Because this is something common that lots of people say, like even if there were, whatever questions they were asking, they keep going to Mass. I felt like I was quite rebellious in my teenage years, but I kept going to Mass.
I don't know.
You were always brought up going to Mass every week, and were you ever given the option not to go to Mass?
Not really, no. I mean, again, maybe 15, 16, when we started to kind of kick back a bit against it, but I think it was just natural. It wasn't a big deal. There were...
That you were kicking back?
No, sorry, going. Going
okay.
was just part of our week. So I think it felt natural to me. And I suppose faith, it is a gift really, isn't it? I suppose I just had that gift of faith.
We want to give our children the best grounding and foundations so that they can receive it in the very best way.
So one of my brothers, well, actually, yeah, he and I, we both went on a retreat together when we were 16. So as well as my mum encouraging us to go to Mass every Sunday, I think she realised as teenagers we needed something a bit more than that as well, and we needed to connect with other young people. So we both went on a retreat actually when we were 16, and I suppose just had some kind of quite a deep experience of the Holy Spirit, you know, where it just kind of comes, where something happens and you just think, this is real, you know, whatever experience it was, I don't really know, it's hard to put into words. But, and I think because both of my brother and myself kind of went on that journey together, I think that really helped, you know, because I knew his faith had kind of come alive and he knew that my faith had really come alive. And so there was a kind of friendship formed, you know. So then he became a Franciscan priest, and so he's always been, you know, a great support in my faith.
Sorry, I thought she was coming. Excuse me, extremely cute girl.
Oh, bless her. What's she got a mouthful of?
Up flapjack.
Ah.
I made it yesterday.
So that was in St Albans. One of the things that really struck me was that there was a chap there. I don't know if he was American or what, but he was calling everybody like, "Hey brother, hey sister." But I loved it. I really loved it, because I just really felt this warmth, you know, that you don't always feel in the parish. And I really felt, I guess at that age, you know, 15, 16, you're looking, aren't you, to kind of belong, you know, and fit. Where do I fit in? Who am I? All those questions. And so that retreat was just awesome. And I just knew that something had happened that would kind of last. And then following that, but I also wanted to do missionary work. So when I was 18, I actually took a gap year with an organisation, and we did some short-term kind of mission overseas trips. So I went to Albania, where there was lots of, you know, Mother Teresa's sisters. So I worked with some of her sisters there. So yeah, those experiences I think really formed me in terms of living my faith, kind of nurtured that sense of we've got things to offer, you know, to others, and we should use our gifts to help other people. So I remember even in early years, my mum would, if we got lots of Easter eggs, she'd always take one or two and give them to, you know, someone that didn't have an Easter egg. Just simple things like that. So we grew up, you know, with Christian foundations, I suppose. And in fact, my other brother, Philip, I would say his work is also vocational. So he works with, you know, adults with learning difficulties and special needs. So again, and my dad was a social worker. So it's lovely, really, that just in our family there's a sense of wanting to work with others.
Did you then feel like you wanted to stay in missionary work?
Yes, I did. And in fact, it's one of the things I struggle with now, because I definitely feel a kind of call to some kind of mission work or evangelisation work. And I ended up living in a community, a Catholic community in the Northampton diocese, or the Nottingham diocese, sorry. And I did that for about 10 years, just lived and worked in that community. And then I studied theology, and then I became a chaplain, school chaplain. So it's always been kind of centred around faith in some ways. And worked for Youth 2000 for a few years as well. And I guess as you do that as well, I found that my own faith was growing from doing that work as well. And yeah, there's just a massive need for it, isn't there? Because of young people. I mean, don't see young people in church. Very rarely. Just anybody over the age of 10 or 11 or 12. They don't seem to be there anymore.
When I first went to U2000, and that was the first time I saw en masse so many young people practicing their faith. And when I first thought, this could be possible.
Yeah.
Because before then, it was people who were nominally Catholic but weren't taking it beyond, you know, the basic.
You don't feel so alone there. You know, you see, don't you, there's like loads of other families and young people. So I think
and not just surviving, but like thriving, like absolutely. Really on fire.
And able to talk about their faith and celebrate their faith, and they're normal, you know, still having a boyfriend or a girlfriend and doing those kind of normal things, you know, having fun, being regular young people, but faith being part of that. I think when I was growing up, they were separate things. My faith was over here, and my life, especially the fun parts, were kind of all over here. And I suppose for me, kind of growing up was when my faith became...
Your brother was becoming a priest. Had he had much exposure to people in religious life?
So one of my mum's uncles, Father Joe, he's died now, he was a priest, and I think my brother liked him, actually. We didn't see him a lot, but when we saw him, he was lovely. He was a good priest, a really good man. So I'm sure, and I think my brother has mentioned that Father Joe inspired him. And I think even just our own parish priest, actually, growing up, who was, to be honest, nobody spectacular, just a regular, committed priest. And in fact, I think we found out only years later that he had his own issues and struggles going on. So my brother was inspired, I think, by just the regular priest that we knew. And he was about 20 or 21 when he first kind of entered the seminary. First of all, for the diocese, Westminster diocese. But that just wasn't quite the right fit. Then he went over to America, did a gap year with Net Ministries, and over there met one of the friars for him, he's quite a radical, all out there kind of guy. When he saw the Franciscans and they really try and live their vows in a really strong way, yeah, he just felt like, this is exciting. And again, it was lovely to be part of that journey. I remember going over to America and helping him find, like this grey pair of trousers that they had to buy and just white shirt, so shopping with him for his like outfit when he was a postulant, just starting off. And then wondering, gosh, is he really going to do this? Is he really going to do it? And changing the name, growing the beard, wearing this kind of his habit. But just thinking, yeah, this is great. He's becoming more and more himself, which I suppose is a sign of a true vocation, that we're becoming more and more ourselves and more joyful. He does the weddings and the funerals, the baptisms.
Did he marry you and Nick?
Yes. Yeah, he did.
This is an interesting sort of dynamic that happens in lots of families where there's there's a range of people practicing their faith to not practicing at all. And so your brother's on fire with his faith and becoming a priest with the Franciscans. And how did you kind of like navigate around having family that are not practicing?
That's still our family now, right? So it has been hard. There have been times where you feel a bit of a split in the family. You feel like there's the ones who do and the ones who don't. My own kind of sense at the moment is that actually, even for my brother and my dad, they're on their journey, so they might not be living their faith in the way that my brother is, or in the way, even my mum's very kind of, out there with her faith as well. And I think sometimes the ones who perhaps don't have faith, they feel that they would compare to the ones who have the really strong faith, whereas perhaps in their own way, there is some faith there. Like I know for my brother Phil, my younger brother, there's something there, I definitely, and even for my dad, he's kind of Christian hearted. So I think the struggle is real and the tension is real, but we pray for one another and we just kind of live our faith and invite them into it as much as we can,
And this is like very much like the black and white, who have it, they don't have it. But what about you're even in the faith, but Father Emmanuel's maybe almost sort of really going for it. Was there anything even with you that he started to say, oh come on, are you pick up the slack a bit?
For me, that's one of the blessings of our relationship, that he will call me on or call things out, if he sees it. And certainly there was a time in my life where kind of Catholic element wasn't so strong. I was just like, hey, I'm a Christian, I can pray anywhere, Sunday Mass doesn't really matter as long as you read your Bible. And at that time, that's when he was in studying for priesthood. And he just really challenged me to really think about actually being a Catholic means something. There's a lot to gain from our kind of Catholic faith. So I remember him really challenging me about Sunday Mass. It's just not okay to miss Sunday Mass. It's just a basic and we need it. And he's really helped me, I think, especially with, the Eucharist, and also not to settle. I can get just a bit complacent and a bit comfortable. So he'll always just kind of challenge me, I think, to what's the Lord doing? What's going on in your life?
Even now?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe even more so now, because I think I have less time. I think being married and with a child now, I feel like that's quite consuming. So my faith life has changed and I struggled with that. If you look at religious life and the way people have time to just give to the Lord, you see that devotedness. Now, how do I navigate that, And again, I almost felt a bit of loss, a bit of a sense of, gosh, I don't have the same relationship with God. I felt that my relationship with God shifted.
So this is when you met and married Nick and became a mummy to Benedict. So where did you meet Nick?
Amazingly, we met in church, in the parish that we go to now. So I was 40 when I met him, and he's older than me. So we weren't young when we met, and we just met in church at a joint friends. Their son was being baptised. Our friend kind of set it up a little bit just as I was leaving the baptism, leaving to go back to London. He said, why don't you just say hello before you go? Just say hello to my friend Nick. He's just a really nice guy. And he said to me, and he knows your mum and your brother. And then the quick backstory is that Nick, a few months before that, had been in church because his dad had passed away, and he was crying actually at the back of church, and my brother was saying the mass. So my mum was at the mass, and my mum just noticed Nick crying, and she didn't know him at all, but she just went up to him and said, are you okay? And she offered to pray with him. He at that mass met my mum and my brother, and then it was several months later that I just happened to kind of bump into him separately at this baptism. We just kind of chatted there, and I thought, he's a really nice. I kind of just remember thinking, he's really nice. It'd be nice to see him again. He says that I was like, looking at him during the mass, but I don't remember that.
But maybe you know if he wasn't looking at you.
Thank you, Maria. So perhaps we did catch each other's eye during the mass, during the baptism, and then it took a while, So we needed again just another little nudge from David, and then eventually, just went on our first date for a cup of tea in a cafe, just locally. So Nick had been away from his faith a little bit, kind of, adult years. And actually he came back to his faith in a bigger way through being made redundant, actually, a number of years ago now. Maybe, I don't know if that was 10 years ago or so. When I met him, he was practicing his faith. He'd been brought up Anglican, and then his mum and dad both converted. His dad, in fact, was an Anglican priest. Him and his mum were both thinking about the Catholic faith, and then through reading Scott Hahn, and also, I think his mum read the Catechism of the Catholic Church, over a period of time. I guess when I met him, it just felt very, just kind of natural and kind of easy. And I didn't know straight away that we'd get married, but I remember thinking, maybe, maybe this is it. And then we got married in 2016, and then Benedict was born in 2017. And then it was just like, life just became very different at that point, really.
So you'd got quite used to doing it almost like your own thing, you and God, doing your mission, and that was quite obvious. So how did it change? Was that easy for you?
No, I found getting married wonderful and really enjoyable, really easy. And even coming to that decision was fab. But having a child, I was like, maybe because I was 41 when I had my son, and I was just like, I found it a real shock to the system, actually. And you want a snack? Okay. Would you like some grapes or a biscuit? A biscuit, okay. Yeah, it was a real gift, because I didn't know if I would ever have a child. When, after a few months I was pregnant and expecting, and I just thought, oh my gosh, I didn't even know how I felt about it, to be honest, because I'm not a super maternal. I knew I wanted to get married. I did have a desire for marriage, but I wasn't sure about being a mum, if I'd be any good at it, but then, my goodness, the moment, even in the womb, I knew I loved him. Even then, I just was so I just thought, this is incredible. I was a little bit freaked out by it, but I knew it was incredible and a gift. But the moment he was born, it was like, that's it. I can do it, and I just knew that God would help me. But I think it was just the tiredness, not knowing what to do. I don't know, I remember going shopping and thinking, oh no, I was carrying the baby, I thought, I don't know how to go shopping. I don't know how to do things anymore. And I don't know, I suppose even quite a lot of fear around, will we be good parents? And fear around the world that he's going to be brought up in. How do we navigate all of that? The hardest thing for me, I think, was just the letting go of my life. It felt like, right, everything I've done up to this point, really, I have to just stop it for now, because I can't do it all, I can't keep it all going. So just that kind of sacrificial love, that it's getting easier for me now, but at the beginning, sometimes I even resented it. I thought, I can't do it, I've got nothing left to give, and I don't want to, I just want to go out with my friends or do what and I know it sounds quite immature, and it is quite immature. So I think for me, motherhood, I feel like I'm just growing into it, really. I think I knew the minute Benedict was born that I would give my life for him in an instant, no question, and And so I guess for me now, that's perhaps what motherhood is, you know, just this giving of my life really to him.
Touching on there as well about what lots of mums experience, like the hidden life, because suddenly you're out there sort of in the world, as it were, and then you sort of retreat back.
Yeah.
And you're at home and you're in the routine and you're getting on with life. And actually part of the hope of our channel as well is to open up the mums' lives of the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, and that our hands that are rearing our children, although it might be hidden, it doesn't mean that other people aren't doing that. And to inspire and console and sort of journey with each other. If you had this vision that perhaps you would be married one day, was this always secure in you, or did you ever start thinking, oh, maybe it's not for me?
That was probably one of my most painful experiences, really, because I think initially I didn't know what I wanted. You know, do I want to be married or not? Am I being called to religious life? Am I being called to single life? You know. So I didn't know, and then you just get older and older, and then you think, oh my gosh, like, it's just not going to happen. And then, and I used to think, and it's funny because, you know, one of the things I've been involved in as well is kind of chastity work and chastity education, speaking about, you know, kind of, I suppose, godly relationships and things like that. But then I remember thinking at times, it doesn't work, you know, like I'm trying to live this chaste life, but it's actually meaning that I'm going to be lonely and I'm not going to ever meet anybody. And, you know, I remember thinking, oh, it's just not getting me anywhere living this kind of life. So there were definitely struggles with it, and lonely at times, you know, and also then you see friends getting married and there's this kind of joy for them, but this sense of, but what about me, you know, and am I doing something wrong? Should I be out there more? Should I be praying, you know, is there something wrong with me? Am I a closed person? You know, all these questions. So yeah, definitely single life was hard, actually. I found it hard. But at the same time, I just knew, you know, I also knew that the one thing was that I stayed close to Christ and that he would then lead. You know, I just knew at some point something's going to give. Like at some point something will happen. And I honestly didn't know if I would get married or not. I didn't, you know. I felt like I kind of had to live my life just like this, you know, with my hands open. And I didn't want to take it. I just thought, I'll allow God to give it, you know. And if he gives it, I'll be blessed. And if he doesn't, I'll be blessed. You know, I just thought I have to trust God's goodness. And so when I actually met Nick, it was just this sense of just gift. You know, I knew that it wasn't something that I had done, but something that God had given me, really. And the same with having Benedict, because of course there can be all kinds of, you know, challenges to having children. So the fact that he came along so quickly as well was just a huge gift, really.
Becoming a mum, because I did almost the opposite, like really young, not married, massively surprised and just like, what do I do?
Yeah.
But also knowing that God's plan is just so sweet in that when we bring a baby into the world, all they need really is just food and sleep and shelter and just keep them safe. And bit by bit you learn with them. And I found that to be true, that you sort of, you know, you make mistakes, of course. I know it sounds really cliche, but it's so true. Yeah. And, you know, we cringe at our own ones, but think it's okay. That's okay, you've done that. At my own ones, I think, oh, no, I did that. And it's worse. Yeah.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because as we're getting older, it's... and I think because it was hard with Benedict in the early years, we're definitely open and we would never do anything to kind of be closed to life in our relationship. It would be wonderful to have another child. We would love that. I think especially for Benedict, you know, I think the gift of brothers and sisters is just awesome and beautiful. So yeah, sometimes I feel that real kind of longing and that real ache, you know, not just for him, but for us as well, because I just think every child is such a gift. At the same time, I think because it was difficult with Benedict in the early years, and because now we're even older than we were, I also know it would be a challenge for us. But we would absolutely never do anything, you know, to kind of stop that. And again, it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's like, okay, Lord, here we are. If you desire us to have another child, then, you know, please let that come about. And sooner rather than later would be good, because, you know, yeah, we're not getting any younger. Yeah, I don't know. It just really is trusting God's plan, isn't it? And
I like what Sarah Ward said on one of her episodes. But I've always been used to the phrase being open to new life, open to life, but open to God's plan. Mm-hmm. Because there's all sorts of surprises that come in life, aren't there? Yeah. And just always being aware that we're open to God's plan.
So before we lived in this house, we lived in a flat. And when we lived in the flat, we felt like we needed just one more room and a garden. And now we live in this house, I feel like, oh, we need just one more room and a slightly bigger garden, you know. And I feel like it's the same, isn't it? With any gift that God gives us, if we can either be grateful for it and just enjoy it, or we can always be feeling, but I just need a bit more. I just need a bit more, just need a bit more. So I think like this thing with a child, I do look at, you know, big families and I kind of like, oh, you know, just beautiful. I love the fact of the children growing up together and just the joy of every new child. But then I think, but we have a child, and if that's what God wants for us, let me just rejoice and be thankful and not always be wanting, oh, come on, God, you know. But at the same time, I also know that God gives us those desires. So we just pray and, yeah, leave it with him.
It's like a circle constantly going around, like feeling that maybe a sort of gap or something that we want to pray for or ask for. And God might not want that for me. I'm putting myself out there to almost even just to pray for it. Yeah. But then, like you say, like coming back around to terms of, but look what I have got, and thanks be to God, and praying through it, and then accepting that it might be or it might not be, but that God's planted that desire.
I feel like either way is a challenge, you know, not being able to have another child. I think, oh, you know, there's a part of me that just feels sad about that. But I also know if we did, it would just bring huge, you know, challenge for us, and kind of, we'd really have to kind of dig deep. And I think that's just on a very kind of human level. I know God would provide what we need. I think it is ultimately, isn't it, saying, okay, God, you are in charge of our lives, you know, in charge of this family, and, you know.
You seem to be just really serene, and you feel the peace with that? You seem to be.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah, most of the time. There was definitely a year where I wasn't, you know, and it caused a bit of difficulty even between Nick and I, because I kept saying to him, hey, like, we have to do everything we can to have another child, you know, like, come on, we've got to make this happen. And of course we do cooperate with God's plan in bringing another child into the world, but ultimately it's his gift. And I think now I'm definitely reached a place of peace. But yeah, there were times when, I think it was a sadness, if anything, just this feeling of sadness, and maybe that will always be there, I don't know. But then I just look at Benedict and I think, well, he's with us, and he might not have been there. I might not have got married, you know, so all these things are just gifts. And I don't want to constantly be looking at, you know, the neighbour's garden and seeing what they've got. I just want to be thankful with what I have, you know. And I am thankful.
You're newly married, and you know you'd both waited a while to meet somebody, and so was Nick kind of set in his ways? Was he?
Well, when I first met Nick, the first thing that struck me about him was just that he was just a normal guy. Does that make sense? He was just a normal guy, but he had faith and just kind. Do you know what I mean? Just those qualities. Same, you know, similar sense of humour. I didn't know he was older than me. I actually thought we were the same age. I think if I'm really honest, it might have made me think, oh, he's a bit too old.
So had you made a kind of list of all the criteria, you know, even subconsciously, of what you thought husband was going to be for you?
Well, I think I wanted to marry some kind of real, like, superstar Catholic man. I think I imagined, some guy who was just really into mission and really out there and really extrovert. But actually Nick is quite quiet, you know, and he's very humble. So very gifted, and with music especially, but he prefers the background and the kind of quiet. And actually that's been very good for me, because that's, I don't know, knocked a bit of whatever ego, or I don't know, why did I want that kind of guy, you know? But I do remember when I met Nick thinking, he's just like me, but a kind of you know, like, but like I just felt this instant kind of connection. And the fact that he was quite low key and just volunteering in the local community, serving in the parish. And I think a bit like myself, growing into kind of being a wife and a mum, I feel like Nick's really grown into being a husband and being a dad. He's extremely giving of himself, you know, extremely giving. And he's probably a bit more grown up than I am. So he's a bit more responsible and mature. And we don't have big arguments. If we do, they're just so small. You know, I think we had to learn how to kind of, I don't know, just not be competitive, but be complementary. And it was more just our personal space. I think if we had issues when we were first married, it was just to do with needing space, you know, because we were used to that, I suppose. But now I don't want that. And I don't think Nick wants that now. So there's definitely this idea of, I never really understood this thing about two people becoming one. I was like, what does that mean? But I just think it means that somehow we're just more mindful of each other. We know each other better. I think of him more, and I do things like put the dishcloth in the right place in the sink, because I know it annoys him if it's in the other place, you know, whereas to me that doesn't matter. And I know he does a lot just to, you know, thinking about me. So there's just, and it's just beautiful. It's just lovely to grow in that relationship.
We're waiting to get married, and maybe we've got these thoughts in our mind of who the person will be and what they'll be like. And like there's initial sort of like, I don't know, like little tussles of just forward and backwards, giving, taking, and working out where that balance is. And that's all part of the marriage. And that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
Working it out and just loving each other and finding those little things, the annoying dish, whatever, close place.
I think I expected it to be different. You know, I expected the kind of romance. I probably read too many books of, you know, theology of the body or whatever, and the man is this, you know, knight who lays down his life, and, you know, so there's been a lot of healing, I think, for both of us. And yeah, it very much is the small day-to-day, very much. And just learning how to tell each other what we need, or just revealing ourselves to each other. It's funny, isn't it? You kind of, we still don't know each other. We know each other, but we don't. You know, there's still so much more of each other to know. And yeah, definitely we kind of, I guess, are forming and shaping each other. And definitely our faith as well, because we come from slightly different perspectives. He's more contemplative, I would say, and I'm probably a bit more charismatic, you know, so a bit more external, and we'll talk about it more. And I like to sing and shout and, I don't know, dance. Nick just likes to sit quietly with scripture. But I still feel, again, there's still that journey, isn't there, of really growing, yeah, I don't know, really kind of sharing your lives on that deepest level, and being really honest with each other to try and, I don't know, to keep that growing. So I think if you're not growing, you're probably dying. Do you know what I mean? I don't think you can just stay still, can you, in marriage? I think it's got to be a constant, where are we at? How are we doing? Where can we grow? I'm sometimes frustrated because I feel like I'm the one that asks the questions, or, you know, will move those conversations forward. But when I do, he responds, and I think enjoy. You know, we've often said we should go back to our marriage prep and just go through all those sections of what it means to be married and the stuff that we bring into marriage. And we should put it in the diary, because actually it's the most important thing. You know, even I think before parenting Benedict well, our marriage has to be well. You know, we have to love one another and be giving time and space. Yeah.
It's tempting to love these gorgeous babies and just get so, you know, engrossed in them. And also we have this a very obvious vocation in motherhood of like rearing these children and parenthood, that sometimes that balance can go off. Fiona, it's so lovely to hear all your thoughts, and it's very generous of you to share them with us. I mean, I've known you for years, and I think it's only been because of this channel that I'm, you know, sort of, I suppose, delving deeper, and I'm really appreciating it. And we want to do that more. We want to hear more about how we as mums are fulfilling our vocations and as wives. You had this like quite obvious mission that you were working through, and then you've come home to the perimeters of your house being a mum. And do you think it's still possible to do it there? And also, do you think that these conversations can maybe support that and support other families out there?
I think I've always been someone I've always needed other people around me. So anything that I've been doing, you know, it's always been there's a team. And I think we need that. I think we need it on a faith level, but we need it on a practical level. So yeah, I think it starts actually with really good, honest conversation, doesn't it? You know, and being inspired and hearing of what people are doing. And it has been a challenge for me, for sure, this thing of motherhood and mission, and how do I marry the two together. A lot of it begins with prayer, because we've got to keep that fire, kind of the heart of it all, isn't it? You know, our prayer life, our sacramental life, but also building community. And I think this is beautiful about the work that you and Peter are doing, because it's really, I feel like the women that are speaking, I just feel this connection with them now, you know, and I feel like it's inspiring me to think about what's God calling me to now. I think at one point, I almost felt a little bit anxious that it has to be one or the other, you know, either kind of motherhood or mission. But I feel like, no, there's a way in which I can still, you know, give the time that I need to give to the home. But there's just a lot of need out there, isn't there? There's a lot of brokenness, there's a lot of need. And I feel like I've received a lot, so I feel like I want to give a lot. I mean, obviously it's a conversation for Nick and I to pray about, you know, and really take seriously. And, you know, we've thought about, you know, I know there are families that live together in Walsingham. There's a great community kind of with, you know, homeschooling. That I know you guys are kind of part of that community. And I think we desperately need to be building community of families, of faithful families. And I don't know what you do first. Sometimes I suppose the community is there and you can go out from that. Sometimes you just have to start doing the work and let the community build up around that work. And so I don't know, but I definitely feel this restlessness at the moment in my spirit. I feel like God's saying, you know, there is other work to do as well as the home.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Fiona, for sharing your story with us. And if there's something you want to hear about, and there's something you want to talk about, or questions to be asked, or a little window into a certain part of Catholic life, ask us, put on the comments, email. It's always lovely to read the comments. And if you're enjoying our channel, please consider supporting our work. Thank you so much.